Hi, my name is Alexis McLaughlin with SIMBA, Spokane Independent Metro Business Alliance. We are a nonprofit organization that helps local businesses and independent businesses in Eastern Washington. We offer one-on-one assistance to small businesses, resources like how to start a business, how to start your LLC. We also do events quite a bit, like this one today. We also have Live Local INW, which is an online marketplace and directory where you can list your business, you can list products, you can list deals, and as of yesterday, you can list your events. So if you are a local independent business in Eastern Washington, be sure to sign up. All of our services are free. So anyway, thank you guys for being here today. And yeah, pass it over to Holly.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for spending your time here today. My name is Holly Smith, and I'm from the Department of Labor and Industries Workers' Compensation Determinations Unit. I've been with L&I for about 13 years, and I'm happy to be here today to share some information with you about workers' compensation in Washington State. So I'll provide an overview of L&I coverage, talk about the definition of an employer and a covered worker, discuss record keeping and reporting requirements. I'm going to provide a high-level overview of independent contractors. And finally, I'll give you some tools and resources that will help you maintain compliance with labor and industries workers' compensation. At the turn of the century, Washington State had a booming lumber industry. By 1910, Washington was the nation's largest lumber producing state. Nearly 75% of its workforce worked in this dangerous industry. At this time, there were mostly single income families, and when workers were injured or killed, families had no income. As a result, they were suing employers to recover lost compensation. Washington's workers' compensation system was started in 1911 when business and labor leaders compromised and agreed on a program to stop lawsuits filed by injured workers while still providing them with the medical treatment and wage support that they needed. L&I's workers' compensation insurance is just that, insurance. It's essentially a publicly owned insurance company and operates on the same principles as a private insurance company, except we don't earn a profit. In 1911, it was established for hazardous works and occupations, but by 1971, industries had changed. They were no longer mostly logging and coal mining, and as a state, we recognized hazard in all employment and a need to provide coverage. So coverage was expanded to all occupations in the state, with a few exceptions. So what exactly is workers' compensation? It's insurance that protects both the workers and the employers from the financial impact of work-related injury and occupational disease, and it's required by law to have as an employer. Workers receive medical treatment, the costs of their medical, hospital, and related services, partial wage replacement if they're unable to work, and disability benefits, partial or permanent, depending on the severity of their illness or injury. Employers receive a no-fault insurance, where they do not have to pay a claim cost and they cannot be sued for work-related injuries or illnesses. In Washington State, industrial insurance coverage must be purchased through labor and industries. They do not allow private coverage for workers' compensation. We do have a self-insurance option. However, you must have at least $25 million in assets and you must clear a certification process. Industrial insurance coverage is paid for with insurance premiums. Those premiums are due quarterly and are generally based on the risk classification assigned to your business based on your business activities, your experience rating or safety record, and the number of hours worked by your employees. Workers also share in the cost of coverage through allowable payroll deductions. So there are some exclusions to workers' compensation. There's 14 different types of labor that are excluded by an RCW. There's also volunteers, which are generally limited to nonprofits, and independent contractors. So this is a list of the 14 different types of excluded labor. And you'll see highlighted in red, business owners, sole proprietors, partners, corporate officers, and LLC members. Owners do not have to report hours they've spent working on their own business and are excluded from L&I coverage. However, if you hire a worker that owns their own business, that worker is not excluded from coverage for your business. Covered workers always include your employees, family, including minor children, casual laborers, and temporary hires. Covered workers may also include independent contractors, owners, and volunteers. It all depends on whether or not certain conditions are met. For example, you generally can't have volunteer status at a for-profit business. So industrial insurance falls under Title 51 of the state statutes, and it defines an employer as someone who contracts with workers providing their personal labor, which includes independent contractors that are not exempt under Title 51. As an employer, in most cases, you must pay workers' compensation, comply with wage and hour requirements, pay unemployment tax, and maintain a safe workplace. A worker is every person in Washington state who is providing their personal labor for an employer, which includes individuals working under an independent contract that do not meet all of the exemption requirements. For Washington workers' compensation, we do not make a determination about whether a worker is an employee. As a business owner, you are required by law to keep records, and those records must be open for examination by the department when requested. Failure to maintain these records will result in penalties subject to the WAC shown on the screen. Penalties can be up to $500 per worker and are adjusted for inflation every 3 years. Records must be maintained for 3 full calendar years following the year in which employment occurred. This list of records that you must keep for your workers, for each of your workers, you must have their name, their social security number, beginning and ending dates of employment, and daily time records, to name a few. In addition to the payroll records previously mentioned, you also need to maintain these records, including your bank records, tax records, contracts, and invoices. If your business were to be audited by Labor and Industries, there are 4 different penalties that could potentially be assessed during an audit. The first penalty is what we call the insufficient records penalty. As previously mentioned, it will be assessed in an audit to employers who fail to keep and preserve required records. This penalty can be up to $500 per worker. The second penalty is the refusal to provide records penalty. This penalty will be assessed in an audit to employers who fail or refuse to provide books, record, and payroll for inspection. This penalty can be up to $500 for each offense. Employers can also have their certificate of coverage revoked by order of the department and can also be forever barred from questioning in any proceeding in front of the Board of Industrial Insurance Appeals or any court the correctness of any assessment by the department based on any period for which those records were not produced for inspection. The third penalty is what we call the unregistered employer penalty. This penalty will be assessed in an audit to an employer who failed to register for industrial insurance coverage prior to having covered workers. This penalty can be up to $1,000 or double the amount of premiums incurred prior to opening the account, whichever is greater. Employers may also be liable for claim costs for injuries that occurred prior to their account registration. Those costs can be from 50% to 100% of the entire claim cost for that injury. The last penalty that could be assessed in an audit is what we call the employer misrepresentation penalty. This penalty can be assessed when it is found that an employer knowingly misrepresented their payroll and employee hours to the department. This penalty can be up to 10 times the amount of the difference in premiums paid and the amount the employer should have paid. This penalty is also a Class C felony. I'm going to talk a little bit about computing worker hours, or what we call units of exposure. So unit of exposure is the measure which is used to help determine the premium you'll pay. For most businesses, the unit of exposure is the hours worked by their employees. However, there are alternative methods to reporting for employees who are not paid by the hour. For hourly workers and piece workers, all workers will be paid based on their actual hours worked. This is going to include all overtime, but it does not include any holiday, vacation, or sick pay. You must maintain daily time records showing the actual hours worked for all of your hourly and piece workers. For salaried workers, you have an option of either reporting their actual hours worked, in which case you would want to or need to maintain daily time cards, or you can report what we call assumed hours of 160 per month or 480 per quarter. Whichever method you choose, all of your salaried workers must be reported using that same method. For commissioned personnel, there are two options for reporting for your outside commissioned workers. For all outside commission workers, you can either choose to report their actual hours, or you can choose to report assumed hours. The difference here is that for assumed hours, you can report 8 hours per day for part-time work, or you can report 160 hours per month for full-time. Whichever method you choose, actual or assumed, you must report all of your outside commission workers using that method. For all inside commission workers, you're going to report the actual hours that they worked, and you'll need to maintain time records to show those actual hours. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the excluded employments of the business owners. So for sole proprietors, the sole proprietor and their spouse are excluded from industrial insurance coverage for work they perform for the business. With partners, only the partners are excluded from industrial insurance coverage. Spouses of partners would be considered covered workers for any work they perform for the business. So for corporate officers of a non-public corporation, you may exempt up to 8 officers, even if they perform manual labor, as long as they are a shareholder in the corporation and they exercise substantial control in the daily management of the corporation on a daily basis. For corporate officers in a family corporation, you may exempt all corporate officers if every officer is related by blood within the 3rd degree or by marriage and is a bona fide officer. They are not required to be shareholders or directors to be exempt from coverage. And for corporate officers in a public corporation, which is has stock exchanged publicly, to be excluded from coverage, the officer must be a bona fide officer performing the duties of the office as defined in the corporate articles and bylaws. They must be voluntarily elected or appointed. They must be a bona fide director and shareholder. They must exercise substantial control in the daily management of the corporation, and their primary responsibility cannot include manual labor. For an LLC with members only and no designated managers, the members are excluded from coverage if they meet the requirements for sole proprietors and partners. So generally, all members are exempt from coverage unless management rights are restricted to certain members. If management of the company is restricted to certain members, only those members are exempt from coverage. For an LLC with members only and no managers, each member may elect coverage individually. For an LLC with managers, only the managers who are also members qualify for the exemption. To be exempt, the manager must exercise substantial control in the daily management of the company. No more than 8 managers may be considered exempt. For an LLC with managers, the LLC may elect coverage for all exempt managers working for the business and receiving earnings. So now I'm going to talk about independent contractors. When we are looking at independent contractors, the first RCW that we look at is there on the screen, RCW 5108180. And essentially it says that an independent contractor who provides essentially personal labor is covered by industrial insurance. So if the individual provides the labor of others, they are exempt. If the individual provides equipment beyond ordinary hand tools that's necessary to perform the job, then and they are not controlled in the use of the equipment, then they are exempt from coverage. In these instances, the individual is providing more than their personal labor. So if you have an individual that you're hiring and they're providing primarily personal labor, they don't have the labor of others and they don't have any specialized equipment, then we move on to either the 6 or 7 part test. These two RCWs cover the tests that the individuals need to pass in order to be considered exempt independent contractors. The 6-part test is for labor that does not require contractor registration, so basically any non-construction labor. The 7-part test is for work that requires that contractor registration, so that's going to be all your construction labor. The main difference between the two tests is that 7th part, they have to have a valid contractor registration. So I'm not actually going to go through all of those today, but there is a booklet that is available to you. I have a link at the end of the slide that you can go on. It's the Guide to Hiring Independent Contractors. And you can look that up and it will take you through each of those tests to help you understand a little bit better. So the L&I Determinations Program, that would be me. I offer determinations or guidance on workers' compensation related questions. I can provide a written determination advising of coverage for your specific situation. My services are risk-free, so any information that you provide to me to get assistance will not be used for referrals for audit. I give you a timely answer to your specific question, and it's a great planning tool to use, especially if you're going to be hiring contractors. Some of the common questions that I receive in the determinations department: is the independent contractor I am hiring a covered worker? Are my workers reportable to Washington or another jurisdiction? Are my volunteers covered? Am I reporting my salaried, commissioned, or piece workers correctly? Are my officers or members covered? And just basically any other question regarding workers' compensation coverage. So these are the publications that I referred to. The links here are available to you. You can go on our website. The first one is the Workers' Compensation Record Keeping and Reporting Guide. It has a lot of good information. A lot of the information that I presented to you here today is inside that publication. Second one there is the Employer's Guide to Workers' Compensation in Washington State. There's a lot of good information in there about industrial insurance, what to do if there's an injury, how it affects your account, how to file your reports. There's a lot of information in there for you. And the last one there is that Guide to Hiring Independent Contractors that I mentioned earlier. That will take you step by step through each of those tests, whichever one you need to go through. And if you have any further questions, you can always reach out to me at the Determinations Unit. I'd be happy to help you out. And this slide, there's some additional resources. You have our homepage there at the top. You can also report fraud online. There's a link there for that. You can register online for your contractor registration. You can also look up contractors. If you're going to be hiring someone, you can look them up to see if they have a valid industrial insurance account or if they have a valid contractor registration, if that's what you're hiring them to do. Pay your quarterly premiums online. There's also links there for the Employment Security Department and the Department of Revenue, so that if you have questions for them, you can reach out to them as well. Now, we also have 19 regional offices throughout the state. If you feel like you need to speak with someone in person, you're welcome to go to any one of those offices. You can find them on our website. I do recommend that you call ahead of time. Sometimes the offices in the last couple of years have been a little understaffed, so sometimes they're only open by appointment. So before you make that trek out to your office, your local office, just give them a call to make sure they're open for you. And I wanted to thank you for attending today. And if you have any questions, My contact information is there on the screen. That's my direct line, as well as 2 email addresses that you will reach me at as well. So, thank you.